And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Katie Greifeld, taking you through to the closing bell with the global simulcast. Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec join us right now. Welcome to our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms. The camera's right in front of you, Carol. As we welcome our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms, television, radio, our partnership with YouTube. It's Friday, Carol, a down day for the market, a flat day for the S&P. But there was a lot of volatility that led up to this, Carol. Where do we go next?
Yeah, and a lot of volume in today's trade, even though it feels like investors are awaiting a slew of earnings, some big names, some big tech names next week. And then you've got a Fed meeting, but nonetheless, a lot of activity, like I said, a lot of volume in today's trade, even though you look at the S&P just up about 4 points.
And not just a Fed meeting, right? We're getting teased the potential for an announcement on who the next Fed nominee will be.
Oh, I don't think we're ever going to get that announcement. We've been promised
I thought it was supposed to
for a
happen
long
before
time.
Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, it's just...
I'm saying definitively it'll come next week.
Okay.
Mark my words.
You do know everything.
All right. Place your bets, everybody. The Russell 2000 today, for the first time in 2 weeks, underperforming the S&P 500.
Yeah, and not just by a little, by quite a wide margin today. It's pretty amazing. I mean, it wasn't clear necessarily to me what was sparking this huge outperformance that we've had to start the year. And then you take a look at today's action. It's also not clear to me why exactly today was the day that broke the streak, but nonetheless, it's over.
Yeah, I was going through because, I mean, it's hard to see on a sector basis, but if you look at some of the individual names, there are a lot of the biggest losers today in the Russell 2000 and in that S&P 400 mid-cap. Those had actually been some of the biggest gainers over the last few weeks, so potentially that could be profit-taking, but to Katie's point here, hard to really know one way or the other. We get the closing bells in New York. A down week for the most part for the broad market, but a mixed day with the Dow Jones Industrial Average down almost 300 points or 0.6%. The S&P 500 oscillating between gains and losses, but it finishes the day in the green, up about 2 points. That's basically unchanged. The NASDAQ composite up about 0.3%. The NASDAQ 100 up a similar percentage point. But as you were just alluding to, the S&P 400 midcaps down 1%, Dow Transport's down 1.4%, and the Russell 2000 falling 1.8%.
All right, guys, that is your closing numbers. Let's go back to the S&P 500 in terms of the split. Winners and losers in the Friday trade. And you did see, let me bring it up, 183 names in the S&P 500 actually gaining ground today, Katie. 318 to the downside and 2 unchanged.
Let's take a look at the sector breakdown as well. A real mix here in terms of what did well. At the top, in terms of a percent gain, you had materials outperforming higher by about 0.9% as a sector. You can see tech represented there as well. Consumer discretionary did well. In terms of what didn't perform on this Friday, your biggest loser was the financials, down by about 1.3%. Industrials, too, sort of at the end of the pack here, Carol.
All right, let's get to some of the individual gainers, if we may, on this Friday. Fortinet, ticker FTNT, topping the S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100. That went up about 5.2% in today's session, as high as 9.5% intraday, but still some outperformance there. Rallying on heavy volume after TD Cowen upgraded the security software company to buy from hold. They said AI is not eating security software, but rather augmenting it. Among some of the commentary, price target set to $100. So we're looking at about a 29% increase from the last price. But you can see the stock closing at about 81 and change. Let's move it on over to CSX, as we know, reporting its results. And that one up about 2.3% in today's session. At its highs again, it was up as much as 5%. So finishing off its best levels of the session. The company gave 2026 guidance, including low single-digit revenue growth. Analysts, though, on the company's results saying that CSX still facing a challenging environment amid tepid industrial activity. JP Morgan says the forecast should be enough for the stock to recover from some of the decline that we saw on Thursday. CSX was down 2% in yesterday's trade. And then an airline, Alaska Air, again, up almost 7% at its highs today, finishing, though, still with a gain above 4%. It did beat Wall Street's expectations, reported strong demand for premium and business flying, though it joined larger rivals in offering a more tepid outlook for 2026. Airline execs offering a wider than usual profit range for the year and telling analysts that the carrier remains at the mercy of volatile fuel prices and potential global shocks after a whipsaw 2025. I feel like geopolitics and concerns around the globe continue to creep their way into commentary among the CEO community.
All right, you got the gainers, I got the decliners. I want to start with Intel. It's kind of yesterday's news, but look at this. It was the most actively traded stock by far today in the U.S. on U.S. exchanges, falling 17%. Did plunge as much as 18% earlier in the session. Lip Bhutan, the CEO, gave this lackluster forecast, warning that the company was struggling with manufacturing problems. Worst single day going back to August of 2024, still up 22% so far this year, up 120% last year, but low manufacturing yields, years trying to restore its tech edge, recover from market share losses. It's a setback for the U.S. government, too. It's trying to rebuild a vibrant domestic semiconductor industry and has made Intel a cornerstone of that strategy. Also, keep an eye on shares of Apple ahead of earnings next week. Shares slipped slightly today, but more so interested in what happened over this week, down about 3% this week. It's its 8th straight negative week, longest stretch going back to May of 2022. It's been down about 12% over the last 8 weeks. And should Apple extend its losing streak next week to a 9th week, this would be its longest streak going back to July 1993. That's according to data compiled by Bloomberg. So we'll see what happens next Thursday.
What are you actually looking for out of those earnings? So, like, I mean, what could even be the upside catalyst at this point?
We talked to Mark Gurman about this. Yeah. I mean, obviously, everything is about the iPhone still. Yeah. But given all the concern about Apple's AI strategy and what Mark has reported this week when it comes to that revamped Siri, he wants to see, action there.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll see.
We'll see.
And this is an interesting one. Syringe makers actually had a pretty bad day.
This caught my eye. I love these types of stories.
This is really cool.
I hadn't been paying attention to this.
Becton Dixon, BDX, West Pharmaceutical Services, WST, Becton Dixon down 2%, West Pharmaceuticals down 4.5%. They fell because analysts are so positive about the launch of Novo Nordisk's oral Wegovy medication. Check out what JP Morgan analyst Robbie Marcus says. He says bullish comments from Novo on the ramp of its oral Wegovy pill has led to fears of cannibalization from the traditional injectable market. So if people aren't injecting the medicine, they're taking pills, that means fewer syringes, and those stocks take a hit.
It's just logical.
Yeah, I was just fascinated. I mean, it's funny how sometimes you don't think about kind of these kind of ancillary beneficiaries of these rallies. The idea everyone's on Ozempic or whatever, Wegovy, whatever, and they need the syringes, so that benefits the syringe makers. And if they all switch to pills, then what? Won't someone think of Becton Dickinson? Let's go to the yield space, because honestly, not a whole lot happened today. And this actually gets to something Katie and I were just talking about a little bit earlier on the close, the idea that if you just woke up today and kind of looked at some of these markets, you wouldn't think that a whole lot actually happened this week. But of course, we had one of the biggest spikes in bond volatility to start the week. It settled down pretty significantly yesterday and subdued today here. Modest, and I mean really, really modest declines today on yields across the space. Of course, that could change in a big way with some key economic data next week, a Fed meeting on Wednesday, and, as Carol Massar believes, a potential Fed announcement out of the president.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where you're coming from. We'll see what we get, because we've been promised that announcement, but eventually he's got to come and do that. Having said that, in the meantime, we're all really focusing on this massive snowstorm that is hitting so much of America. And there's a great story out by the AP, just kind of putting some of the numbers to it. I know you guys have been talking about it. So many Americans are going to be impacted. More than 170 million people, so that's about half the population of the U.S., are in the path of this storm. More than 1,500 flights scheduled to fly through the U.S. airports Saturday were canceled by the time the storm began early Friday. That's according to FlightAware. And then there's some other statistics that really kind of put this storm in perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are concerned about what happens to power supply, the grid health, grid resilience in many parts of the country, not just here in New York, but also in Texas. Katie, given what happened there 5 years ago, we've seen the way that these different jurisdictions have responded thus far, warning people. But with a storm this big, the big question is, like, where do people go if they are affected?
Absolutely. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if we actually get all of the snow that's being forecast, because the range is quite wide. I do want to point out, it's not just planes. Amtrak's are also getting canceled as well. But when it comes to the airlines, another interesting piece of reporting that apparently U.S. airlines are offering to waive fees ahead of this big winter storm, maybe sort of soften the blow of all the cancellations that you know are going to come.
Yeah, and we should also point out too. I mean, we talk about just the potential damage that can do. It's not just obviously the amount of snowfall, but it's also the areas where they fall. It's ice, other things, particularly if it does fall in areas that aren't traditionally used to dealing with that, and that always creates a lot of problems. It's interesting too to kind of see the various local politicians come out and prepare their residents for what's to come. Still waiting for a little bit more of a national response if it does get to be that serious.
So do you know how many snowplows are in Nashville named after Dolly Parton?
Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry, after Dolly Parton?
Yeah. Apparently there's one.
Oh.
That's it?
Yeah.
I feel like there should at least be two.
Yeah, exactly. One in East Tennessee named Snowline after a classic hit song,
I love that.
Jolene.
That's great.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good.
pretty clever.